Nigeria continues to grapple with widening justice and human rights challenges from the disturbing rise in mob violence with thousands of complaints of abuse and violations recorded across the country. Recent data from the National Human Rights Commission shows nearly 355,000 human rights complaints were recorded in July alone. Hundreds of killings and kidnappings also.
And at the same time, there are cases of mob justice that continue to raise serious questions about public trust in law enforcement, the criminal justice system, and the ability of the state to protect lives and guarantee justice. So the question is, what is driving this culture of impunity, and what must be done to restore public confidence in the justice system? Joining us as we discuss this is human rights lawyer Dorcas Anaja, who will be joining us virtually. Good morning, Dorcas. All right, Dorcas will join us shortly. And we have our man here in the studio. You see him all the time in the field. Today, Sagir is with us in the studio. It's great to have you.
Yes, indeed.
In the field and in the
Is this your first time on our set?
Internationally.
Yes,
internationally.
Please, he deserves the bell.
Right. Thank you so much.
And just
Joined us virtually, but
No, he's not. This is his first time on set.
yes.
Studio.
No, virtually is all the time.
And just to mention, Sagir has been following this story back to back, putting reports upon reports on how many have tagged it thieves.
Criminals got talent.
Criminals got talent. I don't know where to start from.
Give us the background to why they're calling it Criminals Got Talent.
Okay, so I think it's basically because it has now transitioned from what we used to know it as. I mean, in the late 90s, early 2000s, that time when you hear that somebody was caught in the My 12 market for stealing something, the person is beaten, wet tire, thrown on top of the person, lynched and burnt immediately. But now we're seeing the trend change into something more different. And I think social media has sort of amplified that. So usually it has now gotten to a stage where if you hear a case of someone stole something or a thief was caught, you begin to see, first of all, you hear clappings, then you hear music, and then whomever it is that is the suspect, because of course, you can't call somebody a thief until the court of competent jurisdiction has charged and of course convicted the person. So you hear music and then you begin to see dancing, and this does not come without a few beatings and of course marks on the person's body. So we've seen this video, a lot of them. It's not one, it's not two, it's not three. We've seen tens of them where individuals suspected, alleged to have stolen items are beaten and then they are made to dance. Now, some people think it's fun, but this is just dehumanizing, especially considering the fact that they've not been charged to court, they've not been tried. A judge has not pronounced them as guilty of such. An investigation has not been done. So now they're being dehumanized in this form. The question being raised now is whether this is what our rule of law has been reduced to. And I'm asking this, while I do so, let's now bring a quick definition. And that definition is about who an average Nigerian is. When the question or when the conversation of an average Nigerian comes to mind, what you think about is probably middle to low income class, maybe within the age of 19 to 27, 28, but the median age in Nigeria is around 19, 20, among several others. Now, the question is for these ordinary Nigerians or average Nigerians as we call them, or as we call ourselves, you go out to strive every day, you struggle to provide access to electricity for yourself with the emergence of solar. You struggle to provide access to healthcare for yourself because not everybody has a health insurance and all of that. Now, when you put all of this into perspective, you now ask the question, when you are wronged, when somebody does something to you that goes against the law and you go to court, will you get justice? I think it is upon this foundation that we have seen mob justice take the turn that it has taken. The people have had issues trusting the judicial system to provide the kind, of conviction or to provide justice for them when they approach it. And hence the reason why we see somebody like this individual.
I mean, look at this guy.
Exactly.
He was caught stealing a chicken, and there's an army
Ew.
officer there. He was told to eat chicken as well.
Gross.
And he was told if he doesn't do it, he will be dealt with.
Okay.
I mean, this is dehumanizing, but let's bring in human rights lawyer Dorcas Anaja. Dorcas, these videos clearly violate a person's right to dignity, as we can see clearly, regardless of what crime they've committed, as they haven't been charged to a court of competent jurisdiction. Some would argue that, you know, in the past, like Sagir did highlight, that it could lead to the loss of lives. And we've seen it in the case of Alu4, that this is better, at least. They're not preventing them from a right to life. What they're just losing is their dignity. And they were caught in the act. Is that sufficient enough justification?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely my personal opinion, and legally, it's nothing justifies the behavior, that behavior, you know, getting someone and then some citizens deciding that it's for them to investigate, it's for them to prosecute, it's for them to also sentence. There's a reason why we have laws. There's a reason why we have, you know, either elected or made and chosen certain people to be able to go through this process, because so many things goes into looking how a crime is being committed. So nothing justifies what happens when mob violence happens. I understand that a lot of people do not trust the system, but we need the system to work, and we need to fuel whatever anger we have towards advocating for the system to work rather than taking violence into our own hands. So I would say in a nutshell that definitely nothing, you know, causes this, because our humanity is going. It's dehumanizing to do this to people. And it's just that psychology, that thing of wanting to control something, you know. So because you can't control how the case goes through the system, how fast you want justice to happen. So because of that, you are left to control them in this sort of way. They can easily say, okay, dance for us, or they can easily say, do this for us. That makes them feel in control. But at the end of the day, our systems are not getting better. Instead, we're eroding our humanity. We're losing a piece of ourselves. And that's not something we want in any sane society.
Well, this is a trend that has suddenly grown out of, you know, different cultures, communities, states. I mean, I saw one from the east, I saw another one from the southwest. So it's like it's a trend. And Sagir, let me go back to Sagir before I get back to you. Would you say that social media has aided and has helped to spread the gospel, the negative gospel of this activity?
Well, I would say yes, the social media has definitely in one way or the other helped to amplify. But what this has done is has given it so what we've seen as trend over time is that it has now become sort of like skit making, as we generally know. So when someone is caught or someone is accused of stealing, in this case, the emphasis is no longer so much about causing so much harm that the person is beaten and then burnt alive. Usually now what we see is when someone is accused of stealing, people begin to bring out their phone because it's almost as if the talent hunt is about to begin. Then you almost immediately begin to hear songs playing in the background. The person is stripped off of his clothes. Whatever it is the person was accused of stealing or the person was caught stealing, he's made to hold, and then the person dances.
As a prop.
Exactly. So now the question is whether the person wins anything. Anyways, the person is beating blue-black, so we could say that's the prize. But then, of course, it is dehumanizing. It goes against established protocols and established laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because ordinarily the process that it's supposed to take is when you are accused of stealing or when you are accused of malicious intent, the police is invited, you are arrested by the police, you're taken to the court of law. The court takes, you face a judge, and then your case is argued, you are defended, for or against, and then in the end, conviction comes.
But Sagir, I'm sorry to butt in very quickly. Yeah. Look at the video of that young man breaking some dance steps.
Actually breaking a leg there.
Yeah, but I've seen some people who have jovially said, this is far better than dealing with the person in a negative sense, physically harming the person,
or killing
the person, or even, like you said, what was known before, bring tire. But with this one now, I saw a comment, someone said, just keep them busy until the police comes. Yes. But before the police takes them away, let them entertain for a second. He's trying to put a split there. Can you imagine?
But Jude, does it make sense? That's the question. Does it make sense that we would literally go from worse to bad and say that is an improvement? Because in the first instance, if one is accused of stealing, you should first of all see the inside of a police vehicle. At least for your own protection, that's what it's meaning. And then,
but the fact that these individuals were caught red-handed, doesn't it count for something? It's not like they need to prove their innocence or guilt.
They're caught. So do we meet the same treatment to politicians who steal billions upon billions upon billions of naira? No, Joe, don't say it's a different situation because somebody is caught stealing. I mean, look at the person that stole a chicken. We literally saw his videos right now. He was made to kiss the chicken. That chicken shouldn't cost more than maybe 5,000 to 10,000 naira, give or take. Let's even say it's 20,000 naira.
You know what that reminds me of?
What does it remind?
African China who sang, "One man wait if Maggie, then go show him face for crime fighter. And rich man wait if money, we know they see their face for crime fighter."
And this is what we are seeing happen in Nigeria. So why should we then celebrate that it has gone from being burnt alive, to talent hunt?
Okay.
Instead
and
of
it only
these
applies
guys
to people of a social
a certain social group.
Right.
I want to bring Dorcas into the conversation, flowing from what we've just talked about in terms of how we display criminals. And I'd like Dorcas, as a human rights lawyer, to speak to the rights that criminals have. And I know that many Nigerians struggle to face the fact that even a person who has been accused of a crime has certain rights. So please speak to us about some of the rights and how those rights are being broken currently, not just by Nigerian citizens, but even by law enforcement.
Thank you very much. So an alleged criminal has certain rights. So from the beginning, speaking to mob violence, you definitely have your right to life, except that is after trial happens and that right is, set aside by a court of competent jurisdiction. So you have your right to life. So things like mob violence, someone attacking you, getting you burnt, that should not happen. The Nigerian law also gives the presumption of innocence according to Section 35. It says that even if you are found, you need to go through the process of them seeing, okay, what happened, and the court needs to happen, trial needs to happen. So presumption of innocence. And then Section 36 also speaks to your right to fair hearing and also to counsel. So when you cannot afford a counsel, the state, through its the Legal Aid Council, is supposed to provide a lawyer for you, and even there, and that's why Legal Aid Council collaborates with organizations such as Hold Behind Bars and other NGOs to say that, okay, we might not have a lawyer here. Do you have someone available in this place to represent this person who has been accused of a crime, to go through the entire process of trial? So what happens in trial is that we need to know what happened. I know a lot of times people are like, no, we caught you red-handed. Yes, there's a part of the law that says that if you admit to your crime and say that, yes, you committed this crime, then there can be a summary kind of judgment. But it's important that you first of all, are being arraigned. That's your asked, are you guilty or not guilty? You plead, and then depending on what side you pick, whether you're guilty or not, there's a lawyer that stands for you at every point in time. There's someone that advocates for you to ensure that your rights are being protected. Now, a lot of people do not understand that this right needs to be kept, and these rights need to be protected until it happens to them. Because there are so many times that we see through our line of work where a lot of people, due to one reason or the other, they get arrested for something, and there might be a misunderstanding. There might be a reason why even something happens. We're looking at the murder might be a very like a very complex case, forgive me. But sometimes things happen, like maybe due to, due to anger, due to insanity. So the law insisting that due process needs to be followed is for us to understand what is happening, where is it coming from, and things like that. So yes, you have to be protected in presumption of innocence, right to counsel, right to speedy trial, to the Administration of Criminal Justice Act here in Abuja, or the Administration of Criminal Justice law in Lagos and other parts of the country, provide for you to have speedy trials. And that's something we've been advocating, that when we keep people long behind bars, when we keep people for a long time without giving them a day in court, we're actually violating their rights, because speedy trials, as much as possible, as reasonably as possible, should happen. So trial delays are actually a violation of our rights. And so you have your right to speedy trial, you have your right to fair trial, and even after a sentence happens and you feel like you have not been given justice, you have your right to appeal. You can appeal to the Court of Appeal. And after that, if you're still not satisfied with the judgment, you have the right to appeal to the Supreme Court as well. Wow. So these are some of the rights that anybody who is accused of a crime has.
This sounds pretty much clear. But for those who are engaging in this fun fair, or thieves have got talent, or what do we call it? Maybe criminals got talent. They do not know these steps. So I think it behoves on an office, maybe the federal government needs to look into it to brief Nigerians, maybe run adverts, let people know that, listen, you cannot partake in this. But let me ask this question. I don't know if you want to take it first before we come down to Sagir. We have recent and past cases, including the killing of Ibrahim Baya and the Alu4 tragedy. That one, I could no longer, I remember the whole day, I couldn't get myself together. The moment I stumbled on that footage, the video, till date, I can still hear their voices in my head. Don't these issues, this particular scenario, doesn't it demonstrate that innocent people can also be victims of mob action? So why is it that nothing has really been done?
I think so many factors contribute to why nothing has been done, because when you look at this, even what happens for mob violence, why it even happens in the first place is because there's a mistrust in the system. So ideally, when an allegation is being made, you're supposed to report to the police. But how many citizens feel confident enough to walk up to a police station and say, okay, this person committed a crime? Sure, they will document, they will take things, but many of them already distrust that the system would be fast as they want, or would also bring justice, because there's also the concept of restorative justice. There's something that we all even talk about, in the justice space, where we say, okay, fine, the law has said there's justice. Justice is a three-way street: justice for the victim, justice for the states that the crime has been committed against, and then also justice for the perpetrator. But a lot of people distrust that the system would actually bring justice to them in the way they want. And so that's why mob violence happens. And so just to speak to your question about why it happens, is that mistrust in the system. And that's why they are not waiting for it to take its course. And a lot of rights are actually infringed upon when mob violence happens, because when you look at it, no matter what, in an ideal society and what the law says, nobody's allowed to beat up or torture someone who has committed a crime. Even if they catch you red-handed, you are not supposed to torture someone. And so when these people committing this violence, whenever they do that, they're already committing another crime. And in the advent of social media, taking videos, what people now feel to do is that people say, okay, yes, they are taking those videos so that they can help the police. But it's not really true, because they are doing it for their own amusement. They are doing it for their own entertainment. They are going to post it online and say, oh, see what we did to this thief, that kind of thing. And so they are also committing a lot of crime. A lot of privacy laws are also even being infringed that we haven't even spoken about. So these are some of the things. I don't know if you can just repeat your question. I don't know if I answered
I think you've answered that. You've touched on that. But let's go back to Sagir. Sagir.
She basically said the words that I had in my head. Because, first of all, constitutional law provides that when one is accused of committing a crime, a process is examined. And that process simply goes through the allegation phase, the investigation, prosecution, trial, judgment, and then finally sentencing to say you've been found guilty of so and so and so. Based on that fact, you've been sentenced to so and so time, whether in a correctional facility or whether it's restorative justice that's going to be the case, or whether it's whatever form that your sentencing is going to take. But for the mobs, you go from allegation to anger to violence. But now in this case, it's allegation, anger, talent hunt. So there's an allegation that an individual attempted to steal a vehicle. Before he says, I was just passing, you've been beaten. Yeah. You've been stripped of all of the items that you're wearing, and then you've been forced to dance. So whether it's the case of Ibrahim Baya and Justin July here, who was accused of stealing the phone, and after he was beaten and unfortunately succumbed to his injuries, it was found out that he was actually innocent. He didn't steal the phone. So what do you do in cases such as that, where the entire mob, and in this situation, we're calling it mob, but we know it is Nigerians like you and I who have refused to be patient, to wait for the police to do their job. Now, that's on the one side. The other side, how do we tackle the issue of trust? Because it's because they do not trust in the system that we see things like this continue to rear its head. On an average, it takes between 4 to 6 years for a court case to be complete. Who wants to wait that long to see justice be meted on an individual that has done them wrong or has committed a crime? If it was a case of maybe because we've seen situations such as that, a case of alleged rape or attempted rape, do you think that the mob would wait enough for the police to arrive, with the arrival time that it takes for the police to come, with the general public opinion of the police and all of that that comes with high-handedness or low-handedness, or hands exchanging hands or money exchanging hands, then before you know, everything is muddled, it's no longer clear, and then the case ends as it is? Do Nigerians really have the patience to wait for that to happen? So these are some of the issues that have really amplified what we are seeing right now. A complete, not complete, but somewhat disbelief in the system, a disbelief in the fact that justice will not be done, and the fact that the leaders are not trusted as much, the police are not trusted as much, and then we see Nigerians generally bearing the brunt of all of this.
I'm glad you mentioned the Nigerian police. Let's go back to Abuja. My colleague earlier was asking whose responsibility is it to raise awareness and also spread the message, so that people know that what they're doing is illegal. Let's go back to Port Harcourt, I beg your pardon. It's illegal, and they shouldn't be doing this, because even the Nigerian police force have their own share of responsibility and blame. If you do recall, I'm not sure we have that video. There's a particular video of the Nigerian police displaying a suspect, and they asked what occupation he does. He said he's a singer, and then he was forced to sing in front of the press, and everyone found it amusing.
As a matter of fact,
yes.
I was in that very event,
Wow.
that very event, yes indeed. And like you mentioned, I mean, it's a case of you were caught, you were paraded, and then during the process, questions were asked. So what do you do? I sing. Where are you from? I'm from Benue State. And then, okay, sing. And before you know, he started singing. I don't want to sing on air. I still remember the song very vividly. But that's literally the case. And then something to add to this, Benga, is the fact that, aside the display, Benga, people actually come up to say, look, guys, let's wait for the police. And you know what happened to them? They are beaten as well. And they are told that they are colluding with the criminals. So even people who come to be the conscience of this mob also suffer it. And this is where we need to do better as a people. You cannot trust the system, but you know in the end that the police has the power of arrest. If you go ahead and the crime is committed while you are there, you will bear the responsibility of it, because when investigations are done, everybody who participated in it will be rounded up, and it will no longer be a question of whether the person was guilty or innocent. The same 4 to 6 year tenure it's going to take for a case to run in court, you will have to go through that same process. So if it's a case of your friend or individuals within your area have been fond of doing this, perhaps this is the time to rethink as a Nigerian whether this is what you want to be known for. Because these things, like I said, Joe, is on the social media. And the social media is not watched or viewed by just Nigerians alone. This is our collective reflection as a people in the world over. People are watching us, and Nigerians need to have some decency.
I think, surprisingly, I saw another footage of also this mob action, not in Nigeria. I think they were mimicking what Nigerians do. It could be, I think it was in Ghana, where they caught one and said, okay, hey, Charlie, I think he has to dance for us too. And I'm like, okay, is this starting to become a trend that we are exporting, you know, out of the country and so on?
When a snake swallowed 30 million naira, where were we? When a monkey carted away with millions of naira, nobody danced.
Nobody danced.
But then now this does not excuse their action, of course. But why are we seeing a lot of Nigerians who are literally below,
it's proximity to power.
Right.
You wouldn't have access. You can't go to Maitama and get a former minister. The minister that was jailed recently, Minister of Petroleum, if I'm not mistaken, that was recently sentenced to a long prison term. You don't have access to him. You can't go to his house and tell, come out, Oga, and come and dance. You stole our money. So these are some of the issues. It's a class war.
All right.
Okay. A comment on YouTube says, the problem is that those doing this to minor theft celebrate political theft.
Right. That's another way to look at it.
Okay, so what we need to put in place in 30 seconds, I'm going to speak to Dorcas and then come back to you. What needs to happen for us to move to a point where citizens trust law enforcement, be able to adjudicate or speedily ensure the process of justice from arrest up until sentencing? What will need to happen for citizens to trust law enforcement? And I'm not just talking the entire administration of justice entity. What would need to happen?
I think, I mean, you guys have made salient points, but I think I'll just speak to the fact that of the training of the police, right? So I think there's a quote in management that says you cannot blame people you do not train. And many times, it's not an excuse, but many times we'll say the police act the way they do as a result of the culture we've imbibed as a society. And so it's very important that, because the police, they are the entryway into the criminal justice system. Many cases are even lost in court because there's no proper forensic evidence, there's no proper investigation done, there's no due process, and the law has to be the law. So the law has to that's why we have the whole Lady Justicia, where her eyes are blind to anything except the evidence placed before her. So if we do not have our police officers trained in the way they collect evidence, in the way they also, mitigate this violence that happens, because you have many police officers tell you that what happens is that during the violence, they actually run away because they know, based on their training, based on the equipment they have, once the violence gets, they have to hide. If not, they will also be, victims of this violence. So we need to train and train and train the police, because once we have training for them done, we also have accountability mechanisms put in place for the police that says, you know what, when people come, people should feel confident to come to the police and report crimes. And when it's not followed, we can hold the person responsible accountable. There needs to be more consequences. As a nation, we need to have more consequences. And consequences can look like punishing a police officer that doesn't do his or her job. It looks like when people report crimes and there is no follow through, there's someone that is held accountable. This will start putting back trust little by little to let people know that, you know what, when you report these crimes, people are going to pay attention to it. And when they don't, they will be punished for it. So training for the police officers, adequate payment for them as well, because we can't keep claiming. I know it's nice to say, oh, police should not collect bribes. Ideally, that is the ideal. But if our police officers are not treated well, if they have to, take scraps for living, of course they are going to accept bribes. It's not something we want to do. It's not a nice thing to think about, but they will collect bribes. So we need to ensure that their welfare is done. And it's not just about welfare. I understand that people can be greedy, but when welfare fails, when they are being treated well, and then they still feel, accountability will catch up with them to ensure that when there are corrupt cops, they're actually being punished and held accountable. I think that will happen. Also, we need to, when we look at the larger system, that's our court system, there are a lot of backlogs in our court. And it's also because we also look at punishment as only one thing, going behind bars, putting people behind bars. But what if our courts already see and start seeing non-custodial sentences in something that we, as an organization, we advocate for, that there are certain petty offenses that do not need the victims of the crime in behind bars. For example, the video that was played of the young man who stole, what's it called, chicken. I'm so sorry, but there are so many things to do with your time than to steal chicken. There's a reason why he stole that. Who knows, poverty? It's not an excuse. But how about when we're sentencing, we look at what can happen, like how you can go beyond that, restorative justice. How can we explore non-custodial sentences? Because when we explore non-custodial sentencing, we have a bit of free time to be able to look at, okay, the people who have committed these harder crimes, they can go to prison, they can serve time, because we need to also remember that the fundamental reasons for our correctional facilities, they're no longer called prisons, but our correctional facility is to rehabilitate. People need to go through that system and be changed and be reformed in their minds. We have a problem of reoffending, and it's because people go through the system and are not being changed. And it happens from even the courts and the way sentencing happens. You have someone who steals chicken is being kept in the same place as someone who stole millions of naira or who killed someone. Of course, there's going to be an exchange of ideas. So all of these things need to happen, but we insist that from the police needs to be trained, accountability needs to be put in place, and their welfare needs to be improved. That will see the ripple effect across all systems.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. Thank you for your very insightful contribution, and thank you to our man in the studio here with us, Sagir. It's been absolutely great having you both, and we do hope that the recommendations you've made will be taken into account, and we can see less and less of this dehumanization of people who have been alleged to have committed crimes and still have rights, right to dignity of human person, and right to fair hearing, right to appear before a court of contempt jurisdiction.